Thank you. All right, so thank you all for joining us tonight. This is the first meeting for the Joslin Park, a redesign of Joslin Park. My name is Kathy Baker Eclipse. I'm the interim commissioner and director of design and construction for the Boston Parks and Recreation Department. I really want to thank you all for coming tonight. We really appreciate you taking the time from your schedule to be here, and hopefully you are someplace cool tonight that you can sit down, relax, and participate in our conversation about Joslin Park. I would like to welcome any elected officials or staff from elected officials who may be on the call and ask that you raise your hand if you'd like to say something at this time. And I am not seeing anyone with a hand raised, so we'll just keep an eye out for anyone who may join us later. Can we move to the next slide, please? So we are providing Spanish interpretation at tonight's meeting. So in order to facilitate the translation, everyone will have to choose a language channel when the interpretive services are turned on. So I'm going to invite our interpreters for the evening to introduce themselves and speak a bit about how to join the correct language channel. Octavio, would you like to go first?
Claro, hola, buenas tardes a todos. Vamos a dar inicio al servicio de interpretación al español para seleccionar el canal de interpretación. En la parte inferior de su pantalla de Zoom verán un icono que parece un globo terráqueo. Ahí podrán elegir el idioma de su preferencia. Si están sintonizándonos desde un teléfono o tableta, van a ver en la parte inferior de su pantalla de Zoom 3 puntos que dicen más. Ahí van a encontrar la opción de seleccionar su canal de interpretación. Si no selecciona el canal de español, no podrá escuchar la interpretación al español.
Thank you. Carlos, if you'd like to just say hello so people know who you are as well.
Sí, buenas tardes. Yo seré su otro intérprete de español. Todo lo que se diga se mantendrá confidencial y es un placer.
Thank you. Tanisha, can we turn on the translation services now? The interpretive services?
All set.
All right, so everyone is going to have to choose a channel. I chose the wrong channel, so thank you. Thank you for that. Okay, can we have the next slide, please? Thank you. I have a few quick items to go over. Please know that this meeting is being recorded. Have we hit record yet? Yes, I think that's correct. Yes, thank you. It will be posted to the project webpage within about a week, and we'll add that link in the chat if you'd like to view the presentation again or share with others. So I'll drop the project page in the chat right now for everyone. That is a hot link. I hope it's the right hot link. During the presentation, we ask that you keep your video off and your microphone muted. During the discussion session, we will encourage you to turn on your video if you feel comfortable doing so. Next slide, please. We encourage everyone to share their questions and comments either verbally or in the chat. Please be respectful of others and mindful of everyone's time. You're also welcome to reach out to me directly via email if you'd like to provide comments that way or discuss the project further, and I'll drop my email in the chat as well. Next slide. So here's a couple of Zoom tips. If a question or comment comes to mind during the presentation, feel free to add that into the chat and we'll address it after the presentation. During the session, use the raise hand button on Zoom and we will unmute you. If anyone's calling in on a phone, you can use *9 to raise your hand. And once we call on you, you can use *6 to unmute and to mute again. Next slide, please. So we're here tonight to talk about Joslin Park. Joslin Park is bounded by Longwood Road, Pilgrim Road, Joslin Place, and Deaconess Road. It's between the Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center Emergency Room and the site of the Future Cancer Hospital project. Next slide, please. So we'll start with an introduction of the project team, then an overview of the project schedule. The design team will then present a site analysis and some preliminary thoughts on the project. We really want to hear from you tonight, so we want to leave time for a robust discussion. And lastly, we'll go over closing remarks and next steps. Next slide. So once again, I'm Kathy Baker Eclipse. I'm the Interim Commissioner and Director of Design and Construction for Boston Parks. Also joining us is Jill Zick, Interim Chief Landscape Architect, and Tanasia Graham-Cole, who's stepping in to moderate for the meeting tonight for Michael McMillan, who is the Community Outreach Coordinator for Boston Parks. Seth Reisman is the Deputy Director of Design Review from the Planning Department. He's joined us to provide some background on the Future Cancer Hospital project's development to date. Mekan Bonner, who many of you may know, is our Fenway Kenmore liaison from the Mayor's Office of Neighborhood Services and is a great resource for community concerns. Michael Van Valkenburg Associates is the landscape architecture firm working on the project. Chris Donahue and John Maxon are the representatives from MVVA. John is joining us tonight. We're also joined by a representative on the architecture team, Michael Hinchliff. So thanks, Mike, for being here tonight. Next slide. So I'm going to turn it over to Seth to give a little bit of background on the work that's been done around the Future Hospital site to date.
Thank you, Kathy. Can you all hear me? Great. My name is Seth Reisman, Deputy Director of Design Review at the City of Boston Planning Department, and was asked to give a little bit of background on this project and how we came to be here tonight. The proposed new cancer hospital is a joint venture project between Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center and the Dana-Farber Cancer Institute. In December of 2023, both institutions submitted updates to their 10-year institutional master plans, or IMPs, in which this one project was identified as the only proposed project in the master plan. Throughout 2024, the Planning Department led a public review process, including multiple task force and public meetings. To promote design excellence, the project also went reviewed by the Boston Civic Design Commission, or BCDC. As part of this process, city departments reviewed the proposed project's impacts, including traffic, parking, environment, and shadows. This informed the allowable building envelope for the proposed One Joslin Cancer Hospital and shaped a package of mitigation measures and community benefits. That process identified significant improvements to Joslin Park and adjacent streets as part of appropriate mitigation measures. Key design principles were established, focusing on safety, accessibility, multimodal circulation, and open space enhancement. The master plans were approved by the BPDA board in October of 2024. Subsequently, in January of 2025, the hospitals filed an Article 80B application for the specific building project at One Joslin Place. This triggered a detailed review of building design and immediate public realm. The Planning Department again led a public process, including task force and public meetings, and BCDC conducted another design review. Because the proposed improvements involve public land, including streets and Joslin Park, approval from other departments and commissions is required. During design review with the Planning Department, both the department and BCDC recognized the significant value of a comprehensive public realm redesign in this area. BCDC took the rare step of issuing a letter of endorsement for the proposed concept that you will see tonight. And I would like to read that letter now. So from BCDC regarding Joslin Park and the associated project at One Joslin Place. We submit this letter of support for the reconfiguration of Joslin Park on behalf of the Boston Civic Design Commission, a mayoral appointed body of 13 design professionals who volunteer their professional experience in service of improving design outcomes for projects of special significance across Boston. During its review of the Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center and the Dana-Farber Cancer Institute institutional master plans, the Commission advocated for a comprehensive reconsideration of Joslin Park and adjacent public rights-of-way from the building face of the Rosenberg Building to the building face of the Joslin Diabetes Center. This guidance was intended to catalyze much-needed improvements to the only publicly owned space in the Longwood Medical area, which today functions as an expanded median between Joslin Place and Deaconess Road, rather than a truly meaningful public place. The project at 1 Joslin Place is uniquely positioned to deliver on this ambitious charge. The reconfiguration of the surrounding public rights-of-way and resultant changes to the configuration of Joslin Park will not only effectively increase the quantity of available space, but also improve its legibility and utility to the public, particularly by strengthening its presence along Brookline Avenue. While the Commission acknowledges that this approach will be challenging, it enthusiastically supports its implementation, convinced of its tremendous benefits to the public. Joslin Park, serving the many patients, caregivers, and healthcare professionals who visit the Longwood Medical area, should provide a space of healing, respite, and connection. It is a civic asset worthy of thoughtful investment and long-term stewardship. Signed, Mimi Love and Linda Eastley, the 2 co-chairs of the Boston Civic Design Commission. The project then received BPDA board approval on June 12th, 2025. While the planning department continues working with the proponent on building and site design, the detailed design of the park will be led by the planning departments through this public process, and that's why we're here tonight. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Seth. Can we take a look at the next slide, please? So this is the outline for the park development itself. And this is a unique opportunity to renovate the park, where it was initiated from the development of the future cancer hospital on Joslin Place. There were some interesting park issues that came up through that process, several of which we're going to be exploring here tonight and in the coming months. But in the forefront of our mind is that we want to deliver a park that works for the community. And so we want to make sure that we're not making decisions in a vacuum, we're making decisions alongside the community. So that's why we're here tonight. It is very unusual for us to begin a design process in 2025 and then talk about constructing it 5 years out in 2030, which is what you're seeing on the screen. But the work right now is really important for us to understand what you and the community would like to see in the park. So that once we have a site plan that we're all comfortable with advancing, the design of the park will continue, but we won't see those improvements until about 2030 at the end of the hospital construction project. The funding for these park improvements is coming from the Future Cancer Hospital and not part of the City of Boston's Capital Improvement Fund. Next slide, please. So as we're thinking about the park design, there are a lot of components that come together. There are City of Boston priorities, there's Parks and Recreation Department's goals, there's safety and regulatory guidelines, and also the community input. All of these factors come together in the final design. The community input is very important to us, but it is not the only thing that we're thinking about when we're designing the park. Next slide, please. So some of those City of Boston priorities, in Boston, we're trying to create a city that has a safe, walkable access to parks. And we want to put equity at the forefront of our park design. We also want to create a park that is climate resilient and provides cooling opportunities as urban heat islands expand. And one of the really unique goals here is to create an opportunity to really focus on health in this park and how we can create a healthy park that will be there for many years. Next slide. So here at Parks, we're trying to create accessible parks that actually go above and beyond accessibility and really create welcoming spaces in all of our parks that have that welcome everyone. And it's especially important as we think about the unique needs of many of the park users in this area, given the proximity to the hospitals nearby. We also want to have a diverse balance and efficient mix of uses within them. And the reason we're here tonight is to have a meaningful and inclusive community engagement process. So all that goes into creating an adaptive and resilient landscape that promotes connections in the community and across the broader city as well. Next slide. So this is an outline of the past development history of Joslin Park. Joslin Park has been parkland since the mid-19th century. It was originally called Oakland Place Park or Longwood Park, and it shows up on many of the 19th century property plans. The Longwood area has really grown up around this park. And in 1957, the park was renamed for Dr. Elliott P. Joslin. In the 1980s, a series of improvements were undertaken to create tunnels under Joslin Park, 1960s, that connect the hospitals below ground. So there's a very complicated section through the park, but it does remain public open space, subject to Article 97. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to John from Michael Van Valkenburg Associates. Thanks, John.
Thank you very much. My name is John Maxon. I'm a senior associate and landscape architect at Michael Van Valkenburg Associates. We are really excited to be working on this project and to talk about the park with everybody tonight and hear a lot of great feedback from folks. So I'll start by talking about kind of what we typically do when we start a park project like this, which is site analysis. Just to orient everyone, this is the current site as it exists today. So you can see the park in the middle, framed by Pilgrim Road, Joslin Place, Brookline Avenue, and Deaconess Road. Joslin Diabetes Center is page north on the top of the page. That is where the future cancer hospital will ultimately go. And then the Rosenberg building is that emergency room that was mentioned earlier to the south of the page. It's not a huge park. It's about 290 feet long by 46 feet wide. There are 6 foot wide sidewalks that wrap around the park with about an 8 foot wide sidewalk along Brookline Avenue. When we look at it in cross section, you can see that 46 foot wide park segment in the middle of the screen here, with those sidewalks sitting within the rights of way of the adjacent Deaconess Road and Joslin Place. And then there's the existing utility tunnel that you can see below grade along with those subsurface rights that were mentioned earlier as well. As Seth had mentioned at the beginning, part of what we're excited about here is thinking not just about Joslin Park, but about the broader urban realm of this area. So a football field can sit between all of these buildings pretty comfortably, and Joslin Park, nestled within that itself. So it's not an enormous park by any stretch, but it's a big urban realm and a really critical area in this very dense kind of urban condition that the Longwood Medical Area is within, both for the LMA, but also for the adjacent neighborhoods as well. Even though the project site is not huge, there is actually quite a bit of elevation change here. So along Brookline Avenue, we're at about elevation 38, and then there's almost 11 feet of grade change as you build up to Pilgrim Road, where you can see elevation 49. And then even kind of going the short way across the park along Pilgrim Road, there's 4 feet of grade change between Joslin Place and Deaconess Road. And that is, that can be kind of challenging because of particularly accessibility issues. And some of those things I'll talk about in a moment when we look at site analyses, but it is quite a bit of grade change for a very small park. We took some initial impressions of Joslin Park and thought about some of the things that we really loved. There's a really wonderful garden frame and urban canopy to the park right now. The park also provides ample seating. It's kind of one of the main programmatic pieces to the park that lots of people come and sit in. Some room for improvement. I'd mentioned the grading and the topography here before. We saw that there is also kind of a singularity attached with this at times very unsustainable lawn that really defines a lot of the interior of Joslin Park. A lot of that is driven by some of the challenges of the topography. And so when we're thinking about opportunities for improvement, improving the accessibility here is really one of our big goals. Related to that, is also that the park itself is disconnected. It's surrounded by those 4 roads that I had talked about before. And those 4 roads really do comprise a really busy vehicular frame. So, there's a lot of personal vehicles that are driving through here that are parking. There's emergency vehicles, there's delivery trucks, and there are, private shuttles and things that are all circulating around the site all the time. that also impacts, pedestrian crossing. So just to get to Joslin Park can be at times a bit challenging just because of how busy the vehicular frame is. In addition to, having these initial impressions, we also, took a critical look at existing conditions and use of the park that I'll talk about. One of the first things we did was work with an arborist to inventory all of the existing trees. So that's what you see on the diagram here. And then, pretty typical for the arborist tree inventory, they noted the species, the size, form of all those trees, the condition, if there's any trees with structural risk, and transplant potential, along with any additional notes that they wanted to add about the existing trees. At MVVA, we looked at some of the existing planting. You can see highlighted in magenta above is this hedge that wraps around Joslin Park of Japanese yew. Inside of that hedge is this kind of garden frame that I talked about that's made up of lots of different species, but we saw a lot of rhododendrons, daffodil, hyacinth, rugosa rose, things like that. And then inside of that is that lawn that I had mentioned. In some cases, looking pretty good, like you can see in that middle image. In others, very beat up. A lot of this we think is due to the popularity of the park, people going to the benches that all sit along the edges of the lawn, and just adding a lot of use and compaction on top of that lawn that over time both degrades the soil and the lawn itself, making it challenging to maintain and to kind of have it look lush the way that you might want to. Existing pavement on site, there's just really a concrete path that wraps around the park on the sidewalk, and then this concrete path that you see highlighted in blue going through the middle of the park. This is both concrete and exposed aggregate, which is just a concrete with a slightly different finish. And you can see that, these paths again are sort of reacting to the grading of the site. In condition C, down at the bottom, you can see the relatively steep ramp that you need to take to go from the middle of Joslin Park down to Deaconess Road. I'd mentioned before, there's lots of benches here. They are highlighted. The seating is great. The challenge here is that most of it is not accessible, unfortunately. So a lot of the benches are sitting within the lawn, which does not make them universally accessible. So it becomes challenging for someone on that concrete path to get to the benches themselves. The couple of benches that we've highlighted in magenta that are accessible are also right on those main paths. So it's not really possible to get out of the path of travel if you're sitting there. So that was certainly a place that we saw a lot of room for improvement because it is so well used to just find new ways to implement seating in the park. There's also some, collection of different trash and recycling receptacles in the park. But I think kind of importantly for us was to look at how people actually used it. And in this case, we looked at it in the context of sun and shade in the park. So we sat in the park, studied throughout the day, people using it, where they sat, if where they sat was affected by shade. Overall, we saw that it wasn't really. You can see the diagram on the left. The sun kind of moves across the site, and so you have some really nice sunny spots, especially in the middle of the day. But shade in general didn't really seem to be a factor in terms of where people chose to sit. But I think kind of most critically for us in all of our studies was looking at pedestrian flows and desire lines through the site. And so this is a diagram showing different routes people take throughout the day. And what we really saw was there was a lot of these mid-block crossings that occurred as people were walking either to Joslin Diabetes Center to the north or to the ER to the south. And that really kind of defined the pedestrian flows through the site. Notably, those are not where crosswalks exist. The crosswalks you can see are at the corners of the park instead. So with those kind of early analyses pulled together, I wanted to talk a little bit about ways that we we're thinking about synthesizing those and then opportunities for the park moving forward, and then really touch on that realignment opportunity that Seth had mentioned at the beginning of the presentation. But when we're thinking about this, we want to think about connectivity and how can this project help direct pedestrians to safe crossing. So with the improvements that are happening here, how can we encourage people not just to do these mid-block crossings, but to really find safe pedestrian crossings in this urban realm? Similarly, how can we make Joslin Park more pedestrian friendly and accessible, kind of beyond what's there now, to really make the project feel like the public asset that it is? And then, also, is there a way that this project can help clarify existing traffic patterns? Brookline Avenue, as many of you know, is a really busy road. It's not a residential street. It's one that has big trucks going down it, lots of transit lines, lots of traffic. And so if there's a way to help clarify some of the confusing intersections that exist there now, it'd be a great asset for this park to be able to accomplish that. And, again, thinking about that football field diagram, how can Joslin Park improvements here support that larger public realm of building face to building face? So as MVVA first started thinking about this park, I think we saw a lot of potential in that rectangular alignment of Joslin Park that you see on the left, to kind of accomplish those things that I'd mentioned. But we're really excited to be working with the city so closely to really kind of dive into this proposed realignment that you see on the right. This takes the existing Joslin Park footprint, changes some of the road alignments to both increase park area, but also really, and more importantly, increase pedestrian connectivity, pedestrian safety, and kind of improve that larger public realm that we were talking about. And so I think importantly, you can see the dark blue arrows represent where we've got these pedestrian crossings that go across the road, really trying to find ways to kind of match those pedestrian crossings with the desire lines that we saw in that early site analysis, so that no matter how you're moving kind of through the site, from one neighborhood to another through this piece of the urban realm, there's a safe way to do that with this project. In addition to, thinking about pedestrian access and connectivity, I think there's also a lot to be said about the way that the quality of the public realm can be improved with this park realignment, particularly in the way that the park cross-section can expand, which really opens up a lot more programmatic opportunities for Joslin Park. So you can see the existing alignment on the left within that narrow 46-foot wide site. And then the realigned Joslin Park on the right, which has the much wider cross-section. We've just dashed in some gestures of, something of what a park might be. Obviously that there's a lot more thinking that needs to happen and a lot more input from everyone about what that actually looks like. But in general, you can see that with that enlarged cross-section, there's a lot more opportunities for different programmatic elements. And even as we move further down Joslin Park, there's some more opportunities to expand the footprint of Joslin Park, again, improving the quality of the public realm here and adding more opportunity for programmatic engagement. I think this diagram kind of shows the existing Joslin Park footprint that you see in that kind of dashed darker blue outline here, that rectangular plan that we're familiar with. And then in green shows that expanded park area. With the expanded park area we're looking at now, there's an approximate increase of new park area by about 13%, which we find really exciting. And I think it's important for me to say that, one of the challenges that will land on the design team is how we make these two pieces of Joslin Park feel like a single park. And that's, I think, a really exciting challenge for us, but one that we're pretty unfazed by. I think with that expanded cross-section and the larger urban realm that we're working within, it'll be really nice to be able to connect kind of visually and physically both of those pieces together. the crux of this urban rail improvement is really about pedestrian connectivity. And so we think it ties in really nicely with connecting these two pieces of Joslin Park together so that they feel like one. And I'll mention before, I talked about traffic along Brookline Avenue, obviously consolidating both the Joslin Place and Deaconess Roads intersections right here really helps clarify traffic as they move through Brookline Avenue as well. So when we at MBVA begin a park project, we like to think about a precedent project to get a little bit more inspiration for that, or for kind of to help frame our thinking on a current project. And this isn't to say, this is what we'll do, but something to kind of get everyone's gears turning in their heads for a conversation tonight. The park that came to mind for us that was a really wonderful precedent to use here is Teardrop Park. So this is in downtown Manhattan, really busy urban condition, very similar to the condition that we have at Joslin Park. You can also see that it's really tucked in between big buildings. So, at first glance, you might think that it's a park that ultimately is kind of defined or dominated by these towers that are around it. But I think this park now is about 20 years old, 25 years old, and has had an amazing time kind of growing into itself, creating a series of immersive landscape rooms that provide a really varied experience for people as they kind of go into the park. That's something that I think is really exciting and really inspiring. Again, thinking about that enlarged cross-section of the realigned Joslin Park just adds more opportunities to create those sorts of immersive moments. Within those landscape rooms, there's also lots of ways to include active programming, like you can see in that bottom image. These can be kind of informal community gatherings or more formalized kind of programming elements that are put together. It's also, a really natural place. I think bringing nature into the city is something that is, I think what we do best. Allowing for people to kind of step aside from maybe a more active space to just have lunch, read a book, chat with a friend. And I think, I'd mentioned before the topography on the site can be challenging, can also be really inspiring. And so we use topography quite a bit in Teardrop Park to add more depth, more layers, more opportunities for engagement with people and the landscape themselves, or the landscape itself. And think that similar strategies at Joslin Park can be really exciting too. And thinking about programming in general, some initial thoughts or opportunities that we had here was thinking about flexible event and programmable space in Joslin Park. Things that, again, allow all members of the community to feel invited and come into the park. Meandering garden paths that take advantage of that wider cross-section of Joslin Park that link the two parks together and allow people to get lost a little bit as they're maybe moving through Joslin Park to wherever their next destination is. Restful spaces framed by planting. There's a lot of benches at the current Joslin Park now. How do we kind of maintain that programming, but also bring in this layer of planting that really allows you to separate from the rest of the city a bit more? And all of these spaces, we will design and want them to be safe, accessible, and inclusive so that, again, everyone feels invited and feels safe to enjoy and participate in the public space. So next steps for us is to hopefully hear a lot of great feedback today. Next month, we'll have a follow-up meeting, public meeting number 2, where MBVA will present a few different design options. But before we really get into design, we really want to hear back from the community about some of these kind of key things to help us frame and help us decide, kind of figure out what to include in the park. So a few initial questions to just throw out to the group. Why do you visit the park? How do you get there? Do you feel safe? What do you like about the park? And if there's anything else you might change about the park. So with that, I'll stop and I'll turn it back over. But thank you everyone for listening and hope we have some great discussion.
Thanks, John. I think did everybody lose audio or is it just me at the end? Can you hear me?
I can. Can you hear me?
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
My apologies. My audio went down at the end, but thank you, John, for framing up this discussion. So yeah, I think we'd really love to hear from the community now about if you have answers to those questions or if there are other questions, what you'd like to see in the park. If you have other thoughts about how do you presently visit the park? And if not, why not? So if people have thoughts and comments, we'll open up the floor. If you raise your hand, we can ask you to unmute, and then we'd love to hear from you all about your thoughts about Joslin Park. And so to raise your hand, there should be a raise hand icon in the bottom menu tray on your Zoom menu. Tom, yeah, let's have you. Thank you. You should be able to unmute yourself.
Thank you, Kathy. Thanks for the presentation. I didn't want to go first because I wanted to give others a chance to chime in on their experience of the park. I'm happy to chime in a little bit. I'm Vice President for Longwood Collective. I'm just back from a long flight. Longwood Collective, we represent 22 institutions in the Longwood medical and academic area, including the proponent, but our purview is Longwood proper, so the entire district, and we our perspective is broader than just the project site. So we're very interested, perhaps from a slightly different perspective, but essentially aligned with the general opportunity or exciting opportunity to improve the park as it is. My experience, my office is right nearby. The park is very linear, and a lot of the things that John has already observed are definitely well expressed. That I think the park feels cut off from the surrounding buildings by the hedge around it. The parked cars along either side as well don't help. A lot of them are illegally parked, and I think I should also disclose we've looked quite closely at this park and independently came up with a very similar configuration, which I think is we worked with landscape architects at Stantec as well some time ago, and believe this to be a really good configuration. I mean, there's definitely, John's been very clear about this, and I think he's absolutely right. There is the design challenge is how to unify both pieces of the park, but even if you ignore that challenge, it is an absolute net benefit from pedestrian circulation in terms of getting to the site. And the benefits of consolidating Joslin Place and Deaconess Road are significant to the district. Anything you can do to improve pedestrian flows along Brookline Avenue, which is where there's a heavy amount of foot traffic, you're basically eliminating one of the conflict points by consolidating those two intersections into one. It may seem sort of small in the grand scheme of things, but when you think of the thousands of people that use that sidewalk, it's a real benefit, and it's also safer from a traffic perspective. We also, just a couple more things. We do programming throughout the district. We have a pretty well-known outside placemaking program that's sponsored by the members, including Beth Israel and Dana Farber. We also sponsor it and arrange that. So we'd love to hear people's input and creative ideas on how to do programming. We have been doing something called WAG Wednesdays, where we bring in Schultz Guest House and have people, we bring in all these dogs in, and probably why the grass is a little worn, and people can adopt dogs, and the populations around there are mostly nurses taking a break at lunch, and also patients as well. And we've had really positive feedback. So I do think it's important to think about the redesign of the park from that point of view. And that leads me to another just point, is that piece of the park that is created under the new scheme that's now adjacent to the new cancer hospital is very responsive to speaking to the stakeholders, which is healing. There's going to be a healing garden in the ground floor of the building there. And there's a lovely continuity now created between that open space and what's inside the building that I think is an amazing opportunity and is going to help draw people into the park as well, even more. Maybe we'll get even more patients, which would be great, and their visitors, because it's a lot of families bringing their loved ones for cancer treatment. So I'm very excited by this plan. You know, I can say candidly, we've looked at this independently, and I'm really excited to hear John's sort of initial thoughts on the design direction. I'd love to hear what other people have to say, but those are our key points. So thank you.
Thank you, Tom. I'm going to ask a follow-up question if I could. I think you may know the open space in the Longwood neighborhood district better than many of them, certainly better than me. I'm pretty focused on public spaces. How does this space differ from other non-public park open spaces in the Longwood district? This is the only open space or public park in the Longwood area, but it's not the only open space. So how does this differ? Like, are there healing gardens? Are there serenity gardens elsewhere? How does this fit into the broader open space mix? And what are the features that we might be able to do in a public park that may be more challenging in a private space? Oh, let me see if I can have you unmute again.
Thanks, Kathy. That's a great question, and I think there's a lot to that. We're just finishing an open space framework that we haven't quite published yet, but we really have looked at this. I mean, the other somewhat comparable space is the Stoneman Plaza, which is at Mass General Brigham, down on the corner of Brigham Circle. It's not a public park, though, of course, and so you're absolutely right. And then the only other public park is Evans Way, which is in front of the Garden Museum, right at the other end of the district. And I would argue really only Stoneman Plaza is comparable in terms of serving the immediate medical district area, sort of proper, and the patients. So I think the challenge is how to. I think there's great opportunity because candidly, you can make it a lot better than it is today. It's very worn and tired looking and not inviting. So I think that's one major thing. And how can you create in a relatively smaller space, different rooms and areas? But again, I'm not a designer, and I would defer to John on those creative things. A lot of the other spaces in the district are basically hardscape. So like the Shapiro Plaza at BIDMC is probably one of the most heavily used areas. It's bigger than this area, but it's hardscape with trees. We use that for ping pong tables, umbrellas. We program music as well. And again, I think those are all things for discussion. We've been trying to figure out how can we connect all these spaces in the district more effectively. And so anyway, I don't know if that really answers your question, but I think it's pretty cherished because it is one of these spaces, and it has a lot of people around it. And so how can we draw those workers, medical workers that have very short breaks at lunch? So how can we pull them out and make it as inviting as possible, and kind of continue some of that feeling of healing from inside the buildings and bring that outside? That's my 2 cents on that.
Yeah, I think I'm just trying to seed some ideas in John's mind so that he has something to work from. So I think that's all very helpful to understand. I think understanding the broader, I think if there is an opportunity for this to be a softer space than other spaces, that may be a good jumping off point, and how we think about the space. Thank you so much. Anyone else have any questions, comments, feedback that they'd like to provide for us? Any other, taking all wishes and things to seed into John's design brain. People must be really exhausted from this heat. Yeah, Allison, if you'd like to, let me see if I can have you unmute yourself. Yeah, thank you.
Oh, okay, hi. Well, I have a couple questions. I think I'm not familiar enough with the Rosenberg building, but just understanding where the entrances are and how people are now using, you said the mid-block crossing to get to the park. And is that directly across from the entrance? Is that, yes. Oh, okay, I see the triangles there. And that's an entrance that obviously is the public entrance, right? For staff and the public. So I would continue to kind of focus on that as wanting, I just think, given again that issue of workers on short breaks and so on, that people will always take the shortest route. So that's something I would think about with the design. And maybe I'm thinking about today because of the heat, but I think the advantage of creating a shaded park is really important here, and not so much pavement. So my other question would be, with the sun and shade study, how I'm assuming some of that's going to change with the height of the new building. So possibly there's going to be more shade. But okay, and I guess that's a question too. And then I think I remember from other presentations that the parking will all disappear, right? That's adjacent to the park. At least I'm hoping it will.
Yeah,
Is-
Michael, I don't know if you're able to, I can have you unmute yourself, and if you're able to talk a little about the, if you, oh no, you should be able to unmute yourself, Michael. About the shade analysis that has been done as part of the Article 80 process.
Sure. So we did do a shade analysis as a part of the master plan, institutional master plan process, and did find that there were some areas in the western part of the park that received a few minutes of new shadow. The majority of those new shadows were less than half an hour of net impact on March 21st. There are some areas that received a little bit more than half an hour, less than 1 hour. So we did undertake those shadow studies, and the design of the current Cancer Institute is not exceeding any of those thresholds that were established with the city during the IMP process. And John and his team have been a part of our team, and they're aware of those studies, and as well as the other areas of the park that are already under dense shadow and deep shadow from the existing buildings. So the park has grown up around existing buildings, and I'm sure John could talk more about the careful selection of plants that respond well to those growing conditions.
Yeah, thanks, Michael. I mean, the benefit of the Future Cancer Hospital is that it's, you know, more or less north of the site. So, you know, as Michael was saying, very little shadow impact to the park. So yeah, I think we're excited to really get into plant selection once we get to that point, and having a variety of different kind of lighting, climatic conditions is also a really exciting way to kind of create different landscape rooms that I was talking about before. So yeah, we're excited. We're very aware of all the current shadow impacts and what that might mean for plant selection, and we'll kind of have our plant palette and our design respond to that appropriately.
And John, can you walk through, or Michael, either one of you, can you walk through the parking diagram for the public realm? Because I think that is a pretty major
Sure.
positive change for the park.
Do you want to take it, John, or me? It doesn't matter.
Yeah, why don't you start, Michael? I'll fill in.
Sure.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you. So working closely with the proponents and with our traffic engineers, the real focus of the proposed roadways is around safe drop-off for patients and visitors to both institutions. So on Joslin Place, the new roadway will focus on through circulation for traffic, and set aside a number of spaces on the north side of Joslin Place for drop drop-off and parking and accessible for active drop-off and loading and accessible drop-off and loading for the future cancer hospital. That's between 6 and 8 spaces. We're still working with John and his team and the civil engineers on the final grading and layout, but the north side of Joslin Place is set aside for active drop-off and loading for the cancer hospital. I'll take a little tangent to remind everyone that the majority of visitors and patients will use the valet service that will be located on the inside of the parking garage. That parking garage is accessed off Pilgrim Road. So similar to how Dana-Farber effectively manages their traffic and visitor traffic to the much, much busier ambulatory care center over at Yawkey, the same situation will occur here. So most people that are coming to the cancer hospital will actually drive into the parking garage and never stop along Joslin Place at all for the optimal traffic circulation. On the south side, on Deaconess Road, that work, again, with our traffic engineers is really set up for just through traffic. The drop-off that's there right now is the location of active patient drop-off and valet services for the emergency room that's located in the Rosenberg building. There are some folks, and I think Jared can back me up here, that may also use that for other inpatient or outpatient appointments there for that valet location. But really, the 10 or 12 cars that are on the south side of Deaconess Road are almost exclusively used by the very busy very busy emergency room. And so the goal is that in the future, Deaconess Road will be maintained just for that active drop-off on the south side, and then 2 lanes of through traffic there, active and anticipating. It's Boston. There's going to be some double parking there, but really trying to maximize that. Now, the new advantage, as Tom might have hinted to earlier, of this plan is that with a new configuration, this does allow a U-turn from Deaconess directly onto Joslin Place for folks that might either miss their stop or for valet services at Rosenberg to make their way over to the parking garage on Crossover Street. So this really will alleviate a lot of traffic that might have to otherwise go out to Brookline Avenue to get back onto Joslin Place to make their way to Pilgrim Road. There's one last feature that I'll mention is that during the institutional master plan, Beth Israel agreed to open up Pilgrim Road to 2-way traffic. That's currently a private road south of Deaconess Road between Francis and Deaconess that now will be open to 2-way traffic, as well as adding a signalized intersection at the Riverway. So we believe that this will also help for patient access, emergency vehicle access to the district by creating a very necessary relief valve into these 2 institutions directly from the Riverway, as well as allowing 2-way traffic for ambulances and cars to get people off of Brookline Avenue quicker and to the destinations that they need, the emergency room or the parking garage.
And can you touch on whether there's a parking lane along the park side of?
There is not, Kathy. So all of our plans are very clear in that the intention from the design team standpoint and the feedback that we've gotten from the various city agencies as well is that the curb lines adjacent to the park should be parking free. They'll be signed as no parking zones. There may be some discussion about standing zone for overheight vehicles or how overheight vehicles might be managed around the park, but the clear intention is that there's no parking on either side of the park. And I think today those are both signed as no parking, but there are some enforcement issues that the city has with both of those curbs.
And is that the same for Brookline Avenue? I see that there's, is that a bike lane immediately adjacent on Brookline Ave, adjacent to the new
That's
park?
correct, Kathy. So the offsite mitigations for the project include 2 raised cycle lanes, one on the western half of Brookline Avenue that will run from Longwood Avenue all the way down to Francis Street, and that also includes a new relocation of the bus stop. I'll pause because the design team will continue to work closely with the city agencies and the MBTA over the coming months as the Fenway Transportation Action Plan evolves. The MBTA's new bus rapid transit system evolves. So before they're built, we'll continue to work closely with the city for those bike lanes, both on the western side of Brookline Avenue, and then a new bike lane on the eastern side here from Jimmy Fund up to Longwood Avenue.
Thank you. So if I'm reading this correctly, the from Deaconess Page South on Brookline Ave, that is a elevated cycle track
That is correct.
between the
new,
sidewalk
yeah.
and the building face, and north of Deaconess, it's a separated bike lane.
That is correct.
Okay, thank you. So there's no parking
No, no,
in front
no.
of that part of the park either. Okay, thank you.
And yeah, north, I think also is an elevated bike lane up through here. So up,
Okay,
if you can see my mouse, yeah, that's
yeah,
also
that makes sense.
coplanar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions from the community in the room? Well, I hope that means that we're on the right track. So I don't want if people have somebody just is joining us. Let's give it another minute, let people think of any other questions that you might have, any directions that you'd like us to explore. The next meeting, I'd like to be presenting two plans for people to react to, so that we can really kind of dig into what people like, what people don't like, but having some direction from the community about what you all would like us to explore, and that would be helpful. So happy to take any other questions as they come up. There's one hand. Allison, did you have another question?
Yes, thank you. That slide with all the tree species, it went by kind of quickly, but wondering how when you present the designs, how many of the trees will have to be taken down, or whether at least the healthy, mature shade trees could be saved.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think, from Boston Park's perspective, we want to preserve and protect the existing trees wherever possible, but I don't know that we have all the answers yet to be able to say how many trees will be impacted by the construction. This is a very complicated site in that there is significant infrastructure below the entire length of the park, which may have a greater impact on some of the existing trees than a typical park renovation project. I know I worked with the BIDMC team a while back, about a year ago or so, to do some emergency repairs, and we had to remove a tree in order to access some of the infrastructure below grade. So unfortunately, that is a challenge to preserving the trees, but we will do a very thorough analysis to see what we can save. And it is also predicated on what the design is, but I think we'll start to get into some of those details at the next meeting. John, did you have anything else to add?
No, I think I would echo that. Obviously, we always want to preserve trees where possible, but I think however Joslin Park is ultimately formed, I mean, our goal is to create a really rich urban canopy to kind of help frame that park too. So, a lot of more new trees will come into the park too.
Yeah, definitely on that new section, there will be definitely all new trees there. So that's good. That's good. Well, I don't want to keep people if there's not more comments. I really do appreciate you all taking the time out of your day to come join us and listen in on our plans for the park renovations. I'm going to ask you to take a look at the park website or for more information as it's coming. And I'll drop the link in the chat again. There you'll find in about a week, you'll find this recording, and we'll also try to put up the slides for the information that we shared tonight. So keep an eye on that project website. We will also be posting the next meeting we have planned, when we're going to be coming back in about 3 weeks, on August 18th, also via Zoom. So keep an eye out for that. If you can share with your friends and neighbors that that this process is ongoing, we'd love to have them participate as well. So you can, I think you may be able to pre-register for that meeting as well in the very near future if you can't already. So keep an eye out for that. You and your neighbors are always free to always welcome to contact me via email, which I'll drop in the chat, or by phone, which is I will also drop in the chat. So if you weren't comfortable raising your hand tonight, or if something comes to you in the middle of the night, I know that's when I do my best thinking. Feel free to email me, drop me a line, and I will share it with the design team. For general park issues that come up, you can, if you want to get general park emails for what's going on across the whole park system, you can go to bit.ly/get-parks-emails. I will drop that in the chat as well. So another good way to get in touch with our department quickly is on our social media channels. We are at Boston Parks Department at most social media places. And 311 is always a great place to let us know if there are maintenance issues in this park or any park across the city. And we are really working on getting our maintenance issues, having quick service for those maintenance issues. So I do, again, just want to thank you all for joining this meeting. I hope it was helpful to you, and I hope we will see you on the 18th. Thanks.
Thanks, everyone.